Yeah, my name is Adnan Sadiq, and I'm a filmmaker. And the short film that's being presented is named Secouer, and it's a short film about a dancer that is essentially struggling with her epilepsy, which is not the best condition to have when you're dancing performative dance. And so the film kind of covers the trials and tribulations of someone who's passionate about something that she's being limited by her own disability. I come from a STEM background. I actually was studying for medicine, and I was working in the hospital when I think in my first week working in the ICU, I saw a person seize, and it was like one of the most grotesque things I've ever seen. And it was somehow like seeing something in front of your eyes like that, something so somehow static and violent at the same time. Uh, that kind of hit a nerve with me where I was like, the person who is seizing has no control of what they're able to do. And I kind of resonated with that feeling of feeling like my true passions kind of lied with film. So I was kind of in like a high school musical paradox where I was like, I had to choose film or medicine. And so I basically started constructing a story around that with that internal struggle. Had also recently watched Whiplash, where you kind of see a character dealing with an external struggle of like the teacher, the drummer in that film has like a overbearing teacher, and eventually he realizes that it's actually good for him. When I was writing my short, I was thinking about more of an internal struggle. So, as passionate as the dancer was or is, it didn't really matter because there's something completely out of her control that is kind of limiting her from pursuing what she wants to pursue. And so, starting from that, um, I was also asking myself, like, what's the point of pursuing art? Because, as you probably know, medicine is so objective. You have a clear solution to what you're trying to do, and there are clear rewards. Whereas with art, it's so much more subjective, and I kind of like the beauty of both sides. Whereas a lot of people that surrounded me were kind of wondering, you have this degree and you have the hospital experience. What is the point of pursuing art? And so that was like a main question that I was writing. Basically, my answer to that is if you are able to pursue it for yourself, then that itself is the point, to pursue it for your own pleasure. And I think in the film at the very end, I kind of answer the initial question, what's the point, three different ways. And that's why there are three different outfits in the finale. So in one outfit you see her performing for others, and she's kind of dancing more outwardly towards the audience, and she's like unhappy. You can kind of see a frown on her face, and she's very sweaty. And uh, the the um, the action I wanted the actress to take was one of just laborious nature, very unhappy, in other words. And so I wanted to show that side, and then the opposite end of the spectrum, she's wearing like a really comfy sweater. She's not dancing towards the audience, but she's kind of dancing for herself out of her own volition. And I wanted to end on that note. I'd like, as depressing as the film can be, I wanted to end kind of on a smile, in the sense that uh, my thesis for this movie is, if you pursue the art for your own reasons and your own ambition, then hopefully somebody else will resonate to it. So it has to mean something to you personally before other people can engage with it. And if you try to pursue the art for any other reason than for your own passion, then it kind of ends up being inauthentic. And that was just kind of my theory going into it. And I realized that after I wrote it, I noticed a pattern with just artists that I am a fan of. And I watched their art and how it is a story so personal to them. Like, I think after I wrote the movie, I was watching an animated movie called The Iron Giant that I'm a huge fan of. Um, yeah, so it's a good one, right? So Brad Bird wrote that film because he was driven, because his sister was unfortunately killed by like a senseless, violent act, and he wanted to write a story about what if a gun had a mind. and he started writing based off that story. And he basically, his own struggles and passions drove and informed his work, and that's what I really wanted to capture with my short film. I wanted to say that it's your own drive and ambition that pushes your work, along with all the practice and all the dedication that the dancer had. Uh, I'd say about 98% of it was storyboarded previously. I had a really large poster board where I essentially like put cutouts of all the beats that I wanted ahead of time. I knew from the get-go that I didn't want any diegetic sound in it, and I knew that I wanted to tell a story visually. And um, my producer who was helping me write it, like when I introduced it to the idea to her, I started with, it's going to be in black and white. It's going to be no sound, and it's only going to have one major character. And her knee-jerk reaction was that no one was going to watch it, or no one was going to want to watch it, and that was my concern too. But part of that was informed from just like the Pixar shorts that I watched as a kid, and because a lot of those don't have dialogue necessarily. And then later on into my film career, I watched movies like Les Jetés, which is completely just black and white photography. Yeah, it's a classic, right? So I basically storyboarded all of it out. The camera work was really important to me. I would say cinematography was my major drive for this short specifically. So to answer your question in short, it was all planned out. Yeah, we never showed up on set sweating about what exactly we were going to do. We were always on the drive to try to achieve the shot and get as many takes as possible. So for the first seizure, where it's kind of an unbroken mirror shot until she falls, I think we did like 50 plus takes of just that. But I can imagine like going on set and improvising, kind of like some other filmmakers that I've met do. That's its own difficulty too. There's an art form to that, just improvising on the fly. So uh, it's just not my cup of tea. So right when I was making the film, I was watching essentially Children of Men on repeat. I love that movie, and it's weird that it seems so. It's nothing like my short film, other than the fact that there are longer takes in it. But Alfonso Cuarón, when I didn't know it, but when I was a kid, I was a huge Harry Potter fan. I still am a huge Harry Potter fan, and he had done Prisoner of Azkaban, and it was one of those cases where I really liked Prisoner of Azkaban. I really liked Children of Men, and I really liked Gravity. And I didn't know that it was the same person behind all those things. And it just like clicked with me that, like I didn't know it, but I was a Quaron fan. And soon after I released my black and white short film, he released Roma, which was his black and white like masterpiece in my opinion. But I'm a huge fan of his, especially what he's able to do with visual storytelling. I love the fact that a lot of his storytelling occurs in the background and in the world that he lives in. So Alfonso Cuarón was a huge driving force. I still, even just like saying the name, I remember, oh, that's 2018 for me. Like, and then later on writing it, I've been a huge Ryan Johnson fan, and he's coming off of Knives Out, but I direct messaged him about my short, and we had like a few conversations talking about the film, and that helped me write Act as well. But he's another huge inspiration. I love the idea of everything in the initial part of your plot comes back by the end. I love that circular plot that he has in all of his movies. He did an episode of Breaking Bad that I think like is one of my favorite episodes of TV. But I think those two were the big ones. I think I was watching a lot of David Lynch at the time, um, which inspires the experimental nature. But I think Quaron and Ryan Johnson were the two major influences for me. I think the biggest obstacle is just that, especially with your first short film, no one really cares that you're making a short film, and so you're really on your own. And I think the biggest piece of advice I can give is work with what you're given with. So I mentioned earlier that I come from a STEM background. And so I did some research earlier in my undergrad. And one of the things that we were thinking of when we were approaching our research was we have to ask ourselves a set of questions to determine whether we do the research. And so I think it's called the FINER method, and it's an acronym that stands for like feasible, interesting, new, ethical, and relevant. And I realized that those five things actually overlap with filmmaking. Is the movie feasible? That's like the first question you have to ask yourself. If you don't have a dance studio or a dancer or a choreographer, then you probably shouldn't make this short film, right? I just happened to have access to all those things. And then in my second short film, I had access to my pet turtle. I had gained some friends. And so my second short film has to do with a disappearing turtle. So it's really the first question you have to ask yourself as a short filmmaker is like, what resources can I take advantage of? I know a lot of filmmakers that their parent is like the manager of a store, and so they're able to use the store as a set. So you really got to think about what you are able to do, because you're not going to be able to make Avengers Endgame in your backyard. And so limiting yourself a little bit is realistic. The other thing was, is it interesting or has it been done before? I think that's a big question right now. Uh, the ethics thing, you might have to go out on sets somewhere where you're not allowed to be sometimes, but we had to sneak into a lot of auditoriums and stuff to get some of our shots. And then I think the last one is the most important, which is just relevance. I'm seeing a lot of LGBTQ movies out there that are pushing the needle a little bit forward, and I think that relevancy takes you very far right now, especially. And I think that's also really important in art, and to ask ourselves whether we are being relevant to 2020, and not just in the fact that we're trying to show new aspects or new perspectives, but also we want to inform people that aren't sure about those perspectives, or if you want to clarify those perspectives. So I think that the hardest thing for me out of all those five things was probably just the feasibility of it all. Like I said, we had to sneak in to find the correct sets. Our dancer, for example, I have 30 short scripts on my laptop, but 29 of them I probably couldn't pull off because I don't have the budget. But that one script, I happen to know a dancer, and so the stars kind of aligned. So the big advice is just that do what you can with what you're given. If you're a filmmaker, that doesn't make you a composer, and so I kind of had to stretch my uh, abilities a little bit there. But we definitely shot the film first, and I was overzealous with how much I thought my musical capabilities could go. And so I happen to know a flautist. So she is not she doesn't do film scores by nature. She's also a performer. So this was kind of an overwhelming task for just a friend, but I talked to her in like a room for like an hour, and I told her everything that I needed, and I tried to stay away from temp music because that's kind of seen as a no-no in film. And she was honestly just very frightened. And then I kind of gave her some. I ended up giving her temp music after the fact, and a huge inspiration for that was No Country for Old Men soundtrack. Just using one simple instrument and going by the scene and then playing to the scene over and over and over again. Um, but that was the big headache. Filming the short probably took 5 months, but recording the music probably took longer, probably took 6 or 7 months. That was by far the most difficult aspect of it. In the finale, when you hear Claire de Lune, I had to get the rights to that, and that was a pretty penny that I had no idea about, like reserving the rights for stuff. Honestly, I'm going to go back to your previous question. I'll say the hardest thing about making a short film is just making the short film and learning from it. And like after a year, the best way to learn is just to make one and like learn all the facets that go into filmmaking. And so the music for me was the hardest part. We actually went and recorded the instruments on the set. So it's basically my pretentious artist part of me coming out. We went back into the room where we shot and we just played the instrument. So it would sound, you get a little bit more echo and understand what it's like to be in that room. I'm sure it doesn't come through at all, but I was like, oh, that's going to be a fun trivia fact in 20 years. I'm going to be able to tell people. But yeah, we definitely waited until we had all the footage so we could sync it up to the dancing. And we didn't know which direction we were going to go with sonically. So what I have working on next has not been written yet. It is in pre production. Um, I have a general idea in mind, but I really want to marinate on the idea before I start writing. And especially now because I have people wanting to be my DP and wanting to be my gaffer and wanting to be an actor in my short now. So it's nice to have that luxury after a couple shorts. But it's definitely still in the works. I have some stuff in mind. I also have med school to worry about, so I'm kind of like balancing both of those at the same time right now.